Hey guys, alright, so today we start a new unit, and our new unit is on Vietnam. So let's talk about how do we get into Vietnam, what's going on with the whole situation with Vietnam. So it all goes back to the Truman Doctrine, right? So we know the Truman Doctrine said that we're going to fight communism, right? And we were going to do whatever it takes. So, the Eisenhower doctrine kind of builds onto that. So Truman Doctrine says we will step in and give supplies and assistance when needed if a country is going to in danger of falling to communism, whereas Eisenhower says, we will give troops if needed, but it doesn't quite get that far at the very beginning. So Vietnam is going to be split at the 17th parallel. North is communist, and South Vietnam becomes a democratic republic. So if you back it up before all that goes down, Vietnam originally started out as a territory or colony of France, and it was part of what they called French Indochina, to where it was Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia were all part of French-owned territory, French Indochina. So they fight for their independence. They get their independence in 1954. Again, this is during the Eisenhower administration. They get their independence. Vietnam splits. And so the trouble goes down is because Ho Chi Minh, who was Vietnamese, he had actually left Vietnam, going to China, lived in China for a while, and he had been working on a plan for a while to unite Vietnam under communism. That was kind of the plan that he had for his country and for his fellow countrymen. So he comes back, 1954. They get their independence. They become their own free and independent country from France. And he starts trying to organize the country, again, to conform under one government and all become one nation under communism. So a lot of this all goes back to him. Now, South Vietnam was being controlled by, and I'm just going to call him Diem, D-I-E-M, just because I probably do a horrible job of pronouncing his first name. But Diem is who the United States is trying to sponsor and assist because he is controlling South Vietnam as a democratic republic. Okay. So what's happening is that things are not going well for Diem. He ends up canceling the elections that were supposed to be coming up. He's trying to do whatever he can to maintain power because he's really concerned about an overthrow. But it actually ends up being worse than an overthrow. He ends up being assassinated. The Viet Cong is another group that we have to talk about. So the Viet Cong is a group of North Vietnamese supporters. So they do want to be one nation under communism and follow Ho Chi Minh as their leader. And they do guerrilla war style tactics. And guerrilla warfare is the idea of hiding and surprising your enemy and doing a surprise sneak attack. So they do a lot of that in South Vietnam, which is really a scary situation when the United States gets involved because we can't tell, this is a big famous quote, friend from foe. So you have a hard time figuring out who really supports you as a U.S. soldier or who's against you and is just, going to try and kill you in your sleep or something. It's a really scary situation. Okay. So let's fast forward through the 50s. We get into the 60s, and some people argue who officially got us into the war in Vietnam because there's a lot of information that tells us that we had American soldiers in Vietnam prior to us officially declaring war, and Johnson asking for what he calls the blank check. Blank check meaning that he's not telling Congress or the American people how long he expects for us to be involved in Vietnam. So it all comes down to, and we talked about this with what was it? The Spanish-American War, to where, we need just cause to declare war, right? Like the idea of American blood being shed, or whatever an example would be of the United States feeling like we need to defend ourselves and someone else, right? So we have a boat that's sitting in the Gulf of Tonkin right off the coast of Vietnam that ends up being attacked. We say that it was attacked by a Vietnamese fishing boat, and very similar to that of the USS Maine incident with the Spanish, to where, we claim it was them. Well, we do the same thing. We claim it was the North Vietnamese. They're like, I don't know what you're talking about, bro, right? So kind of a sketchy situation with that. So anyway, we claim that they attacked us. That gives us just cause. LBJ goes to Congress and asks Congress for a declaration of war. So as Chief Justice, what am I saying? Not Chief Justice. I meant joint. I can't even think straight today. As being over our armed forces, as one of his many hats. Commander-in-Chief, that's what I meant to say. There we go. As being Commander-in-Chief over the military, he can send them out, but he has to ask Congress to be the ones to officially declare war, right? So anyway, they issue what they call a blank check. They don't require a certain end date, but everybody imagines that this would be a quick and easy war. I think everybody is really strongly surprised at how long it takes us to get in and out of Vietnam. Okay, so we put together what we call Operation Rolling Thunder, to where we plan on just bombing the snot out of the North Vietnamese. We figure that'll end it quick, fast, and in a hurry, and it'll be over with. We do have some new technology that we talk about, like Agent Orange and napalm, which we also find out there's a lot of side effects with people that are around these chemicals, and we believe that these chemicals play a major part on a lot of these soldiers coming back suffering from PTSD and other issues. We have our Secretary of Defense, Robert McNamara, who's going to be organizing a lot of what goes down with Vietnam. We've got General William Westmoreland, who's going to get a lot of shade thrown at him from the news media for the decisions that he makes while we're over in Vietnam. So we've got the Viet Cong teaming up with the North Vietnamese. The United States is teaming up with South Vietnam, even though we don't know how many of those South Vietnamese are actually Viet Cong in hiding, right? So it's a scary situation. We don't know who's who. We do know that the Viet Cong are using trails, the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And if you have your PowerPoint open, you can look to see that the Ho Chi Minh Trail actually goes from North Vietnam into Laos and Cambodia and circles back into South Vietnam. And that's how they're sneaking in. And Vietnam is very much a jungle-like environment. So we're using new technology like Agent Orange and napalm to essentially burn the underbrush to take away any way from them to hide in the jungle, which of course eliminates our way to hide as well. So it's a rough situation. We are going up against a very different enemy, one that is going to do whatever it takes, throw every man, woman, and child at us to get us to leave and get out. We can't tell who's for us and who's against us because there's so many people that are trying to play both sides, really. We're again using new technology. If you watch Forrest Gump, you see them dropping napalm and burning up the woods. It's a really scary situation. They're using booby traps. They're using mines and tunnels. We do have a lot of canine units that are involved in Vietnam that are trying to find these booby traps. There's not a whole lot of ways to get in and out of Vietnam. They're having to be dropped off by helicopter, and you're scared to death, not ever knowing when that helicopter is coming back to take you home. Some guys are gone on deployment 15, 18 months, years. You don't know how long you're going to be gone. The really sad part about it is that a lot of these guys are being drafted. We do start the draft back up, and they're being drafted into a war that a lot of them don't agree with and don't support. So I'm going to save that for a discussion for tomorrow. So let's stop there for today, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.